Who of you has been to Chicago Summit 4 weeks ago? That's a few. Good, it's not so many, because I was really lazy. I'll do the same presentation. I didn't have much time. I'll talk about totally different things, but I use the same slides, right? So it is going to be exciting. You know, we split, and I'm not sure what I'm going to talk about, but we'll find out. We split the summit into two. You remember Berlin? Who of you was in Berlin last year? Ah, very good. Excellent. Remember how Claudia and I were asking the question, do you want this to grow bigger and bigger and bigger? Shall we stay at this size? And most of you were saying, don't make it bigger. Right? This is a networking event. We want to meet people. And of course, with all you here, representing all these interesting companies and making friends over the 8 years that we have been doing this, right? A lot of people know you, and you know a lot of people. You want networking time, and you want to find the people. Because some people you don't know. Right? And they're from very interesting companies that you want to talk to. And we want to facilitate that, because we can tell you as much as we want how wonderful we are, and of course we are, but you don't believe us talking about it. You talk to people working with us, using our stuff already. That's much more trustworthy, isn't it? So we wanted to facilitate that. So Claudia and I last year said, let's meet next year in Amsterdam. Right? This is not Amsterdam, you noticed that. There's rivers, though, and we're going to be on the river on Friday, so you get some grachten, Frankfurt style, a little wider. Not so interesting, but still, the boat tour is going to be awesome. Make sure you come to the boat tour. The whole program is awesome. We have, except for me, really interesting speakers coming up. Dave is going to be awesome. All the group of people after that tomorrow morning. Make sure to leave the club at like 5:30 in the morning. Get your teeth brushed and be here at 9-ish, because we have Mikko Hyppönen, who is the security guru in the world, and a lovely guy and a great speaker. We're very proud to have him. We've asked him, I think, 5 years in a row to come, right? And this time he said, I have no time, but I feel really embarrassed that I've never made it, so this time I just come. And he comes in at night. He's going to miss all the fun stuff tonight. He comes to be here tomorrow, so make sure you're here too. No matter what state, no problem, right? You get coffee as much as you want and water for rehydration. It's probably going to be required. But you're going to enjoy the whole program tomorrow, including the boat tour. In Chicago, we had our old friend Jonathan McDonald that you've seen in Berlin. This time we've made because we've turned this into two summits, we said let's do two totally different summits. So if you've been to Chicago and you're coming here, you'll have two experiences that are very different. But let me recap a little bit what we learned from Jonathan, because I found that very interesting. Jonathan, in one word said you need to elevate. That was the word, elevate. To understand what it is, what value you're really providing to the world. Why you are here at all. And why people, deal with you, give you money and give you trust. So what's the why? And once you've found that, you have a huge competitive advantage, because now you're elevated and you're looking at the world in a very different way. And you can make decisions that seem crazy from the outside, but that will transform the company in a big way. And he was giving one example that I really liked. It was Kodak compared to Fuji. Both made 99% of their business from film. That's the stuff you put in cameras back in the day, right? That you had to develop. And of course, print paper. That is when you still printed pictures. Now, with the advent of digital cameras, that got disrupted big time. And here's the difference between an elevated company, not Kodak, and one that was, Fuji. Because Kodak thought they were in the photography business. So they were denying the digital camera disruption, because you know how disruptions go, right? You have an inferior technology down there somewhere, and you make fun of it. You go like, ha, 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 look at these digital pictures, 640 by 480, 3 colors, right? And you only get 3 pictures on a memory card. Because believe it or not, a picture is 2 megabytes, right? And a memory card is 8 megabytes. That's what it was in '95 when the digital cameras came about. So a lot of laughing in the Kodak headquarters, right, which look a lot like Detroit now. Because the way disruption works is, of course, that technology evolves not linearly, but like this. And we humans are not very good in forecasting events that are logarithmic, that are squared in the way they grow. Because you hit a disruption point and then it's too late. Kodak reacted when it was way too late. The technology developed the way it did. Now you buy 128 gigabyte memory cards and you can put 1 million photos on there. Right? Our talented cameramen are not changing the memory card anymore, even though they seem to be shooting 2 million photos today. They may do it for backup reasons, but that's really the only reason. So now Kodak, not being elevated, went into the digital camera business and got blown out of the water by the ones that had prepared or actually created the disruption. Fuji was elevated. They said, what is it that we do? What do we know about? And what do people need? And they realized we know about light hitting surfaces and what light does to surfaces. So really a film is nothing but a special coating to make a material either light sensitive or insensitive. Now, where can we use this knowledge to provide value? And guess what they came up with? A skincare program. Too late for me, obviously, but turned into a great business for them. And they're still relevant and around. So to do that, you have to think outside the box. You have to come up with what it means, what it is that you're doing. What's the value that you provide? What's your light hitting a surface? It's not obvious, right? Going from film, once you heard the story, you go like, oh yeah, that's obvious. Like any good invention, at hindsight, seems obvious. What is this? Has nothing to do with Open-Xchange, but you can probably guess why I kind of like that. Right? It's a truck in a box. So it's like the IKEA version of a truck. Easy to ship, cheap to build, and you ship it anywhere in the world, and the people can put it together and have a truck. People that didn't have a truck before. How do you get to the idea of putting a truck in a box? Or an example that I really like, and I think you're all fed up with it already, but I will repeat anyway. What is this? Tesla is a car maker, are they? They're not, right? They're not a car maker. They are maybe much more a utility company. They're maybe much more in disrupting the way we use and create energy, which is the core of everything that we're doing. And now you see them making moves that from the outside look stupid, and the stock market is really struggling with understanding what's going on. Because he's combining companies that are, when you think of it, okay, solar company, batteries for home, battery cars, a charging network, you get to see the pieces falling into place, don't you? Somehow, right? Think of them now putting solar on every roof, putting batteries in every house, connecting them all to a network that's smartly managed. What do you have? You have the biggest utility company in the world with clean energy, available all the time. You can distribute energy in real time, like the Tesla distributes energy in real time to the wheels, which makes it a real fun car. And if you're in Germany, you can actually use it, right? That's also very good. That is pretty clever, and that is elevated. And he had that plan from the very outset. Because you have to make very long-term decisions to build that, like the battery factory that he's building near Reno. So there's finally a reason to go back to Reno, which is planned for a size that seems crazy. But it's of course not crazy, because this will need a lot of batteries. And of course, in the core of his business model, batteries really need to work, solar panels really need to work. This is the simplest thing that he's building, really. The rest is fairly complex and grandiose. But talking of grandiose, this guy is really grandiose, because he's got another elevated view to the world, which is interesting. This one. It's the Dragon capsule. It is what will take people to space on SpaceX rockets. And the only reason Musk is doing what he's doing with rockets is that he eventually wants to get 1 million people to Mars, because he doesn't want all eggs in one basket. Because if a big, whatever hits Earth, we'll be the next dinosaurs. And only because the dinosaurs never made it into space, they've gone extinct, right? So, well, not quite, because chicken and birds are sort of the small version of dinosaurs. So we're going to be chicken and birds if we're not careful. And he sees that, right? And he just is saying, this is why I'm here. I will take, I will start the human. I will restart, in fact, right? Back from the 60s when we had this craze, he's restarting that, and he says it's about time. Because the odds are against us 100%. It is going to happen. The question is only when. So we better get off here. And it's a big, big thing. And why am I saying this too? Because you have to be able to stand this if you elevate and do crazy things. Because you're going to fail a lot of times. And it's not fun. I mean, you see $200 million satellite blowing up. I mean, it was a Facebook satellite, so. That was sadder, right? These landing attempts that he had with the first stage. It was so much fun to watch. It was the most exciting thing for me to watch in years. Forget the football championships. Football is the round thing. We call it football here for you Americans. Because you could watch in real time this happening. And eventually, of course, you blow through the money. You need to raise money. You need to, retain the confidence of the people. And when they see these pictures with their satellite blowing up, they go like, is our next trip going to be on SpaceX? Or fortunately, the others are not that much better, so you can sort of retain that. But you're blowing up a lot of money too. So how do you get financing for that? Lots of challenges if you do these types of things. But they're well worth it because at the end of the day, you get a photograph that looks like this, which is actually my background picture on my phone. That's the rocket standing on a barge in the middle of the ocean. I mean, imagine this. This thing is like 80 meters high. That's 250 feet or something. That you shoot it up, it goes into an orbital configuration, comes back, and lands on a shaking barge. It's like somebody said, the wait but why guy. In case you want some good reading, go to Wait But Why. It's a guy that takes topics and writes long articles about this that are well-researched and real fun to read, just as a side note. And he had this picture of you taking a pen and throwing it across the Empire State Building and catching it on the other side on your finger. That's what he does. Right? It is crazy, but once this works, he's going to change the industry, and that's the elevation again, because he said if we would be throwing away the 747s that we fly across the ocean every time we use it, a flight to New York would be $1.5 million. Right? Because you have maybe 350 seats, so you have 500 million, and you blow up the whole 747 when you land. That is not a scalable model, right? We want to sort of retain the 747s and go several times, and this is what you need to do it. Very simple thinking, gonna disrupt the industry big time. So, having said all this, I'm thinking all the time, why am I doing what I'm doing? We all live, in a great world. We can spend our time in many ways. The only limited resource we have is time. Time is everything. Your money, if you lose it, you can get it back, maybe. Right? Time, you never get back. So how do we spend our times? And of course, it would be great to do things like Elon does, because not only does he create great businesses, but also he makes the world a better place. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to be remembered as the guy that innovated financial industry in a way that he could screw even more people and make more money. That's kind of bad karma, right? No. That's not my thing. I want to do something that's really great. And a lot of you, I know, are the same. Right? You are on the same mission. Because it feels better and because we can. Right? How can we? What can we improve to make this world a better place in the areas that we're working at? And make some money to have great parties like this one, right? I mean, all our wonderful sponsors here need to make money to give Chris all this money for him to spend it on us, right? So he always gets that, but he's spending the money wisely, isn't he, right? He's finding great locations, and you're gonna see all the other stuff that we're doing. It is great fun, but for that you need money. There is no way, I mean, even though, who of you had seen Aral Balkan in the Hamburg summit? Who was there? Quite a few. Aral is a great friend, but I think his thinking has one flaw. He hates money and capitalism. Right? But you go like, but really if you want to do something in the real world, it needs money. And the world is capitalistic. I mean, I've lived under communism. Believe me, it's not better. Much worse. real crap, right? So capitalism may be the best thing that we currently have, even though it's misused occasionally, but that's so. Let's accept the system and let's change the world. That is for what we do. Now, this is very abstract. Let's go to the concrete. This is the pre-internet world. Who of you had a CompuServe account, let's say? Who had a BTX account in Germany? Who had a Minitel? Right? How did you send an email from BTX to Minitel? Not. Right. How was the user experience on a Minitel, on a BTX, on Prodigy, on AOL? And that hasn't changed, right? Just kidding. Yahoo. Heard of that? It was a pretty awful world when you think of it. And these services, the pre-internet was owned by individual companies that controlled the full stack, and you got locked in to that service, right? And they controlled everything you could do and could not do, and you could not communicate across the borders of the system. Now, that worked somewhat, right? It was better than before, not having this, going through the yellow pages in paper and stuff, but it really did not take off when you think of it. The technology, to do something like the internet was there. It's just that these things didn't communicate and were silos. So what happened then? I like these pictures. They're so visual. Those of you that are not technical, it's the protocols that the internet is made up of. It is a stacked architecture, so one sits on top of the other, and they all have one thing in common, apart from being a little bit messy. They are open. There is no company owning patents on this. There is no company getting money every time a package goes through the wire, except for the one providing the actual wire, because that costs money to do so. But you as providers are not paying TCP company, a penny per megabyte or something. Because if you would, we would not have the internet. And you think I'm joking? No, I'm not. This layer, for example, there were proprietary protocols owned by companies that tried to push it to be the protocol for everything. CDs, right? That's not a protocol, but a physical implementation of a protocol. And there's a patent on this, and Philips still gets money per CD. And Sony doesn't like it, because they have to pay. Now nobody needs CDs anymore. Right? But MP3 is not an open protocol. Even though it's invented by Fraunhofer Institute, a German heavily government-subsidized company, they have a patent on this. And if you create MP3s, you have to pay them money. None of that in here. All open. All open. And that has created the biggest change in our living time to everything, right? This has created the jobs that we now have. I guess that's probably true for all of you. It has disrupted a lot of industries and created new industries. And it is the biggest change that human beings probably have seen in the past 100 years. It's like maybe the invention of electricity, and with the whole industrialization, steam engine, electricity, industrialization, that was a big change. But in terms of the change of knowledge transport and the changes that it did to all the businesses, and we're not even through yet, right? We're still disrupting lots of business. This was created because all this is open. And everybody could participate. So anybody can say, I want to play, I have an idea, a business idea, I plug in and I'm connected to the whole world, bam. Right? I pay my ISP, because you have to make sure you get the fire on the ground as fast as you can, and I'm totally happy to do that. I have choice, because you cannot make the internet proprietary. Right? It's not that I only get to certain internet sites when I buy a service from somebody else, except Facebook gets it their way. But we blew up the satellite, so it's not happening, maybe, for another year. Let's see. So no matter where I plug in, I have choice. You sometimes, as a provider, you may hate that. You say, the prices are going down again, and these guys have done that. But that's what free market is all about, right? Provide a better service, faster service, add value to it to make it more sticky to your customers. We're talking a lot about this. You're in business, and anybody can be in business, and I, as a part of the internet, can do whatever I want. That created the good times. That is 20 years ago. Right, 95 roughly is probably the breaking point of this, when it sort of became ubiquitous for all of us. On ISDN, I don't even remember Mosaic browser on ISDN. I actually ran it under OS2. None of that there anymore, but it worked. Like I said, the technology that AOL and Prodigy ran on was there, and it ran the internet. It ran it a much longer time before, but you didn't have ubiquitous access to it. Now, that had created the foundation for a lot of wealth. Now, this wealth is sort of also expressed in the changes it did to our lives. This picture shows 60 seconds of internet, what's going on the internet, and it's probably outdated because, again, we have exponential growth. So the numbers are even higher than here. What I find interesting is that email still beats it all because we're sending 150 million emails a minute. Right? It's more than Facebook or than WhatsApp Messenger. But of course, we see these things growing as well. Why is that? Because we're spending more and more time on the devices. I'm happy that none of you looks in your phones right now. So I'm probably not that terribly boring. But other than that, I was reading a fun tweet yesterday. And it went like this. Went to the restrooms, forgot my phone, 138 shingles on the wall. Right? That's how we are. I mean, we can't be in a Starbucks without looking into our phones, right? We can't do 30 seconds of waiting without looking at our phones, right? I'm not sure that's a good development. Sometimes I feel like we're turning into zombies when I'm in one of those lines and I happen to not look into my phone because my battery is drained or something. Not that I do that a lot. But then you look around and everybody's looking into their phones and they have this blue shimmer on their faces. You're like, is this where we're going? Just imagine getting some real small HoloLenses on as glasses. We'll be zombies. So we have to sort of work on the cultural evolution of that too. Look at this picture again. When you look at the technologies that we talk about here, you'll notice that some are based on the open internet, like email. Right? When I use email, I don't need to know what email system you are on. The good news is 70% of you are on Dovecut, right? I know that. But you don't need to be. I can send you an email, and I don't care what email system you're using. Why is that? Because email is an open protocol that anybody has. Now, I don't know about you. I had to promise my daughter not to mention her in this presentation. This is my daughter. Hello. You knew it was going to happen, right? So when I want to communicate with her, I'm on the road a lot. She's 17. She's on the road a lot, obviously. I have to check how we communicate. We have a family group on WhatsApp. That's great. But now my son had his iPhone stolen. And, it's bound to the telephone number, so no more WhatsApp for whatever crappy reason, but that's how it is. Okay, so now he's off the group. So now we have to go to Facebook Messenger to communicate with my son so that he is still there. But of course, I got Skype and all this other stuff as well. In business, we may be using more Skype and and on it goes. And you all look at your phones and count the number of messaging services that you're using, and you're back to AOL, BTX, and all this crap, CompuServe. Why do I need to know this? This is BS. Why do we? Because the way the game is played, you all know that game, right? Is that we have very few companies trying to control all the services that we're using on the internet. Locking them back into proprietary silos that they control end to end. Needing to use some of the infrastructure that we're all providing, so they still use your pipes, your network, right? But they're totally devaluing it because they are providing the stuff that makes the money. And they are very good at doing these things. Why? Because they were there at the inflection point. Right? They were there when the exponential growth actually happened, and they provided some of that technology. I mean, we all love Google Search, don't we? It's great. Google Maps, great services. Until you look at how it's done, how the sausage is made. We'll hear Eric of Quant talking about this. Very interesting. Because obviously our data, the data that we generate, has become the new oil. They are the new oil companies that want to control the oil and the oil distribution, and they make a shitload of money. Yeah. promised Dave to say some F or S words because he's Scottish, and, and Scottish and Germans are very similar in that dialect, I would say, right? But also that we use these words. But he's numbed it down a bit. He promised at least. Let's see how that works. With this money, of course, you can then buy into all these other industries, right? And just expand yourself to crazy sizes. If you look at the top new, 15-year-old or younger companies with a valuation of more than $50 billion, right? You find these guys. And it's crazy, crazy, crazy value that has been created for shareholders. Unfortunately, there's only very few shareholders that got crazy rich. And the middle layer, the people that you employ, you're probably among them, are being squeezed. That the whole telco industry goes through constant restructuring. Hosting industry goes through constant restructuring. Because you're squeezed down. They make the money, and they're trying to squeeze you for the service that you provide. They want full control. They will not want you to even be around in a couple of years. Because they will not need you, they hope. Because that is one control point that they don't have yet. And of course, the network generates a lot of oil, data, that they would want. And you're maybe just waking up to the fact that you have all this data, but maybe in difference to them, you're regulated. So you can't do with the data what you want, but they can. You have to adhere to the laws of your country. They don't. They only have to adhere to the laws of one country because they're mostly from the United States, but they're not regulated. So they can do what they want. And you see that in incidents like, what's the latest, the Yahoo hack. If that happens to a telco, there's a procedure they have to do, there's a lot of regulation on how you indemnify your customers and what have you. And you're in real trouble. Real trouble. And you have to prove to the authorities what you do to not make it happen again. Right? Yahoo? You heard anything? Because there is nothing. But the only thing that happens is that Verizon asks for $1 billion discount, which maybe is not asking enough, because that's a pretty big event. But that's the differences of the playground. You're not on this board. You're playing according to different rules. Or maybe you are on the board and you have rules and they're not. They don't have rules. Now, is this good for us? You could say, so what? Then I start working for Google, right? Have monopolies ever been good for us? Does anybody of you have an example of a good monopoly? Good, because I couldn't think of one. I lived under a state monopoly, now that we're here in Germany. Right? I was born in Leipzig in East Germany. And luckily enough, my father is Spanish and got us out in '74, after I've been there for 10 years. And living under a state monopoly that has a monopoly on everything. The supermarket is state-owned. Right? The variety in the shelves of the supermarket was not great. I read oranges once a year, and then you had a 200-meter line, people trying to get an orange. So that's not so awesome. I mean, I didn't care as a child, but after a while, it wrecks your nerves. So you get, look at South Korea and North Korea. Right? You couldn't visualize it any better. You have no blowing up batteries in North Korea, right? But hey, I take the batteries. This is what they are building. Think of it. This is the world they're trying to build. Wealth distribution is already changing. And we see the results of that in some elections that you may have heard of. Not a pretty picture. We see that in Europe too. You can make fun of the US as much as we want, but look into Poland or Hungary or look into Turkey. Is that great? That's what you get if education levels go down and if people try to build monopolies. You can build a state monopoly. You can, there's no provision in democracy for democracy to be discontinued. Right? If an Erdogan gets voted in and he changes a few rules, no more democracy. So we have to be a little careful. And it goes back to wealth distribution because that relates to education levels, right? And that relates to openness of the world and access to these things, access to education, access to wealth and money, ability to rise in the hierarchy. If that doesn't exist, there is no motivation to do that. I mean, if you live in one of these oppressive states and you look into your future, your only development path may be terrorism, because that's at least a job, right? And at the very end, you get lots of girls, right? Which, I mean, I'm not saying that this is what they're trying to build, right? Because there's no girls, I guess, in this business. But, you know. But yeah, I know I should stop this line of thought. But these guys are as nice as they are. I mean, they build excellent products, really excellent products, and we all use them. So that's great. But you all already feel the difference. I mean, paying $1,000 for a phone is pretty incredible, right? I mean, really incredible, because it costs $200 to make them. And you look at the profit margins of an Apple, and they have 110% of the profit margins of all mobile phone makers, right? Because they're probably the only ones making money. I mean, Samsung was making a little money. That's probably over too, right? So incredible wealth being created, but like I said, it goes only to very few companies. Incredible service created. That's the challenge, by the way. Now, I guess you know what this is leading to. Yeah? Now I'm going to say we have to change this, right? No surprises here. Question is, change to what? What is the future going to be like? And you see, I was looking up, is there a term for this sort of post-silo internet? What's the post-silo internet? I am 100% confident that we will get a post-silo internet, because the good news is usually these monopolies don't last very long for many, many different reasons. It may be regulation, which I'm not hoping for, because the governments usually tend to be way too slow, to even follow what's going on. I mean, see the stupid regulations they're coming up with. Theresa May, I'm a big fan of her. She's awesome. IP bill. I mean, you read it, you go like, man, no, you don't get the basics. The cyber is more complicated, Ms. May. Right? No. I mean, you don't get it. So that they won't help us. We have to make it happen. We have to make sure that we get sort of the basic civil rights being worked into this. And we got to make sure that they don't get it their way, because it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. You can't have a little encryption, right? You can't be a little pregnant, right? It just doesn't work. It's math, science, that stuff. That really works. It gets us to the moon and stuff, right? Belief doesn't, at least during our lives. Now, what shall we call this? I mean, I thought maybe Web 3.0 was a good term, but then I looked it up, and it was back in 2010 or so, or 2008, I think it was the semantic web. We just tag everything, and then we have this huge database. Didn't work. But now the term is probably available again, right? So maybe it's the Web 3.0. And actually, you see some people using that. What is it? It's, again, a federated web of services. What is federated? Remember the picture with the open protocols that I was showing you? They're all federated protocols, meaning anybody can set up a service, let's say a web server, HTTP. It's a federated protocol because you connect it to your DNS to be found. You set up a server which connects to TCP/IP. It gets an address, and you're part of all web servers of the world. Equally reachable if you pay enough for your content distribution and your line and so forth. So there's still money involved. But if you have no money at all, you just wire it to your university's network, and you're done. And anybody can participate, no control point you have to overcome. And I don't have to ask, your website, what web server is it on? And what browser do I need? Sometimes people don't support all browsers, that's okay, but for the most part you don't need to ask. You just need to know the name and you go there. Same like email, I need to know your email address and I send the email. That's what federated means. The implementation doesn't matter, anybody can participate, there is no control point, thus it needs to be open. Now this is why we're using the word open all the time, because that is a basic principle. Without it, it won't work. Some of you have heard me talk about the 4 principles of trusted internet services. Who of you has heard me talk about this? Okay. Then I repeat myself, bear with me. For those of you who've heard it before, it's very simple. What is a trustable email service? It all goes down to trust. The thing is, you can trust Facebook or WhatsApp, which is the same now, right? Oh, WhatsApp. No, we're not going to give your data to Facebook now that they've acquired us. I just pocket the 20 billion and I stay a good guy, right? So you trust them, you say, very good, very good, very good. And then comes the day, like it came, where WhatsApp said, we just give all the data over to Facebook anyway. Screw you. 20 billion is a big cushion to rest your karma on, right? So Mr. Young, Ukrainian guy who built this awesome company and deserves every penny of the 20 billion because his mother, went to Silicon Valley as a cleaning woman, and he hacked his day away and he built this wonderful company. That's the American dream coming true. It is wonderful. And all is good. The problem is you can't easily move from WhatsApp to another service because you would have to take your whole network with you. So whenever these things happen, there's always this outcry of people moving to Telegram or something like that. I mean, you've probably all done that. So here's another messenger on your phone, Telegram or whatever, right? Oh, yeah, I've been really waiting for another messenger. And then you feel like, oh, it's lonely and empty here, right? And WhatsApp message, let me check, and bam, you're back in. That you just can't get out. So now, this only works because it's fully proprietary. You can't change the service. You just can't. You can't even take your data with you. Your network you can't take with you. Your message history you can't take with you. I got 30 years of my email. 30 years. Because 30 years ago I started using email. So I got that. It's there. I changed systems dozens of times in the meantime. So a service is not to be trusted if it's not available from many providers, rule number 1. If you can't take your data with you, rule number 2. If you can't get the software that implements the service, rule number 3. And why is that? Because to have multiple providers, the software needs to be available, right? And it needs to be compatible. I mean, at least the protocols need to be open so that others can implement it. Now, you still would have to trust the software maker, right? Which you shouldn't, because you don't know what's going on, You don't know if there's backdoors in the software. So the software, and that's number 4, needs to be open source, right? Very simple. Because now you get full transparency. Now, even if the maker of the software behaves strangely, sells for 20 billion. I mean, quite seriously, if somebody offers us 20 billion for Open-Xchange, I'm sure I cannot keep my wonderful investors from at least contemplating the idea. What can I say, right? You can't trust me. You can't, because I don't trust myself, right? I mean, there is things that change us, right? So, but then, because we're an open source company, let's say Timo and I hate the idea anyway, company gets sold, we just fork all the software and go on. There's nothing that can keep us from doing that, if we feel like it. Or somebody else can. So there is lots of room for even dealing with such a disruptive event. And we've deliberately left the room in that with the way open source licenses are crafted and the way we use them. So with the 4 rules, having multiple providers, being able to take your data, software available and software open source, you have a simple checklist whether a service is trustable or not. One that you consume or one that you provide. And that is in the core of the Web 3.0 idea. You create federated open services. If it's open, you will have a multitude of providers providing them. And of course, you will have all the benefits of incremental knowledge development, like we have it in science. I mean, why is humankind so wildly successful as compared to all other animals on this planet? And we're just animals on this planet. We're nothing else. One difference. We found a way to manage knowledge and give it to others. Whatever you invent, no matter how great it is, you're standing on the shoulders of giants, right? That for hundreds and hundreds of years have spent their lives inventing great stuff and made it available openly. That's the way science works, right? Proprietary silos don't work this way. They create wealth for very few and not for us all in this room. So being Mark Zuckerberg must be fun, right? But there's only very few Mark Zuckerbergs out there. I rather have millions and millions and millions of people like us that are like what was his name, Dennis Ritchie said, that are comfortably poor. He defined levels of richness, you know. And the one that where I thought, wow, you're rich, was having a wealth of anywhere between 500K and maybe 10 million. That was a category, just one category. And that's called comfortably poor. So if you have 10 million, you're comfortably poor, okay. Right, and Mark Zuckerberg, by this definition, is filthy rich. Right? that is anything above 5 billion or so. So there's even levels between. I'm not sure what I would be. I mean, spending money is not so hard, but I don't know. I guess you're comfortably poor between 500K and 10 million, and we should all be able to generate this wealth for us. You know, if we work hard, if we have good ideas, if we're honest people, and all that, it should be. This type of wealth should be available to everyone. So I'd rather have many of those than one Mark. I like Mark, but I think he could do with 10 million and would be a happy man too. He doesn't need 100 billion on his account. He just doesn't. Nobody does. Right? And these people then have trouble getting rid of the money again because they see that their time is running out. And most of them actually do good things. So I'm not blaming them at all. Like Bill Gates or Warren Buffett, you know, they're doing great things with their money. But why do you want this monopolistic distribution of money? Doesn't make any sense. Why do we want a monopolistic web? Doesn't make any sense. Because the service quality, what we pay for it will decline. You know, we get into East Germany now, East Germany territory with this. Right? Whom are we going to call if you're not happy with the Google service? Right? It's tough. Right? It is really tough. So, and here lies the opportunity, and Dave will talk a lot about this. It's not so much about disruption or something. It's much more, and there's lots of talk about this, an elevation. You know, we have a video online with Jonathan's talk, I believe. I will show you the URL. Think about elevation. You know, what is your reason for being? What's the value that you provide? But now also think about what you have. Because you guys sit on a treasure trove of stuff that you can use to create the next web. And of course, the benefit you'll be deriving from that is endless. I mean, just look at the money that's already being generated by this business. And we're only beginning. Monopolies never persist. So we have to disrupt the monopolies, you know, by reopening the internet. And I hope you use this summit to generate ideas around this, to generate ideas what your elevation is, why are you here, but also to have very concrete ideas how you start implementing Web 3.0 services that you bundle with your products and sell to your customers, that you make a lot of money with, and that we're, you know, defeating the silos with. Because now is the time for this to happen. It has happened before. It's totally not impossible. It's almost mandatory when you think of it. It will happen. The only question that remains is, will you be Kodak or will you be Fuji? Right? Will you be Tesla or will you be, I was about to say VW, but I'm not sure. Certainly not Toyota, right? No. Chrysler, VW. I mean, they're making choices still, and VW may make it. They all sound like Tesla now when you see their future plans, right? Which is okay. I mean, better follow too late than die, right? so maybe, right, they're getting it. I mean, Mercedes, no joking. They've said, oh, we'll become this integrated electric companies. You will get home batteries from us. You will get solar roofing. You will get electrical cars. And you go like, I heard that before. That's okay. It's okay. There can be 2 Fujis with skincare programs, no problem. Right? At least they found their elevation level. Now find yours. Use the summit, all the interesting people that are here. You know, we have delegates from all over the world representing all interesting telcos and hosting companies, people that are in this world, that on the one way have to defend what they have, but also create the new things that creates this. You're all here. Use the 2 days to communicate amongst each other. Be open in the way you communicate, and I know you are. This is, by the way, awesome and really surprised me how open you guys are when you talk amongst each other. Right? Because you're all sharing the same threats and the same opportunities, and there's room for lots and lots of us in the world if we create this. And this is what this summit is for. The second part, and Dave will pick this up, is think of what you already have. You have an incredible, incredible treasure trove with great stuff in there. You know, the 4 or 5 big companies still need you because you have great stuff that they're depending on. And that's a great foundation to sustain your business and grow it and create this. And I hope this little summit that we're doing here helps you go home with your head full of ideas of what you're going to do next, and a little headache, from the drinks. I think then we will have accomplished what OX Summit is all about. So thank you all for coming from all over the world. I think Ian wins again because he comes from New Zealand. So he kind of always wins, right? It's always the father. Ian, where are you? Ah, there's Ian. You'll see him on stage. Don't miss him. Ian McDonald from SMX. We've got lots of delegates coming all the way from Japan, and thanks for coming. I'm still trying to convince Claudia to sing a Japanese song. You wouldn't believe how good she is. Claudia, where are you? She's a great singer, and she can sing a Japanese song about, what was it, flowers? Tonight, after 2 drinks, she promised. So bear with us. And we'll ask the Japanese delegates how she performed. Sake, right? 3 drinks of sake. And again, Claudia, thank you for joining us again. You've become part of this. You're part of the inventory now, I'm afraid, right? Yeah. Oh no, that's great. We love Claudia. She keeps us sane, and actually she manages to deal with people like myself and Eric, who's even crazier. So that's a tough one. Again, thanks for all the sponsors. They're here for 2 reasons. To be honest, the real reason is we want their money to... No, that's not true. The real reason is they represent the ecosystem that you can use. Right? Here is the tool set to build this. We're only one piece. Right? We're one piece, or maybe you have 3 pieces. Right? But there's, tons of more pieces that you can use. So listen to them, what they have. Right? It's really, really interesting. And that gives you sort of the toolkit to build this. And together, we will be able to reap the benefits of creating this. And that gets me back to the very beginning, to create good karma for us. Right? To do something that is really good, that we can look back at and say, I spent, and I like the American or English term, spending your life, right? You're spending your life. A life well spent. And we hopefully can then look back and say, we've spent our time well, we've done something great that we can be proud of, right? And we've made the world a better place, and I'm comfortably poor too. So thanks for coming.